My name is Prince Abdullah. I was 34 years old, and on March 15th, 2019, I was scheduled to die by public execution in the heart of Riyadh. According to the law of my land, my fate had already been sealed. A sword would be raised above my neck, and in a single moment, my life would end before thousands of watching eyes. That is what should have happened. But instead, at the precise moment the blade was lifted, a violent sandstorm swept through the city, sudden, overwhelming, and impossible to explain. Chaos erupted. Visibility vanished. And in the confusion, my life was spared. This is the story of how a Saudi prince came to kneel before an executioner's blade, and how everything I thought I knew about God, faith, power, and truth was forever transformed. I was born into a world most people only see in documentaries. I was the third son of a cousin of King Salman, raised within the inner circle of Saudi royalty. As you watch, we invite you to be part of this moment. Let us know where you're watching from, and share what touched your heart. Your comments are more than words. They can encourage someone, strengthen faith, and remind others that God's love is real and active today. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd be glad to have you with us. We're always happy to welcome sincere people like you into our growing community. My childhood unfolded behind palace walls made of marble and gold, surrounded by fountains that shimmered under desert sunlight and servants trained to anticipate my every need before I spoke a word. Before the age of 20, I owned 12 luxury cars. Private jets were available with a single phone call. Borders opened for me without questions. I had access to wealth, influence, and privilege that most people could never imagine. Yet beneath all of it, something was wrong. From early childhood, I had been immersed in religious discipline. I memorized large portions of the Quran by the age of 5. I was trained in Islamic jurisprudence, theology, and tradition. I observed the 5 pillars of Islam meticulously. I fasted, prayed, and gave generously to charity. I even led prayers at the royal mosque. My future was carefully designed. I would govern a province. I would marry strategically to strengthen alliances. I would preserve the dynasty. Everything was planned. And yet, despite all of this, despite every blessing I believed Allah had given me, I felt hollow. The emptiness was not dramatic. It was quiet, persistent, like a slow suffocation of the soul. I asked myself questions I dared not voice aloud. Why did obedience feel like bondage? Why did power feel like pressure? Why did a life that appeared perfect feel spiritually lifeless? I had everything, yet I felt as though I was slowly dying. Everything changed in March of 2018. We were hosting a diplomatic reception at the palace, welcoming Western ambassadors to discuss trade and international cooperation. I played my assigned role well, the modern, educated prince fluent in Western culture, poised to bridge worlds. Later that evening, while inspecting guest quarters to ensure everything met royal standards, I noticed something on a bedside table in one of the rooms. A small leather-bound book. Simple, unassuming. As I picked it up to return it to security, I saw the word embossed in gold. I froze. Possession of this book was forbidden. I should have handed it over immediately. That was the law. That was my duty. Instead, something compelled me to open it. My eyes landed on Matthew chapter 5. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. Those words struck me with unexpected force. This was not philosophical instruction. It felt personal, direct, alive. That night, I locked myself in my private study and read what Christians call the Sermon on the Mount. Every sentence confronted everything I believed about power, honor, and righteousness. Jesus Christ spoke of loving enemies, blessing those who curse you, and refusing revenge. This was not the theology of dominance. This was the language of surrender, and it unsettled me deeply. For months, I read in secret. Guards were dismissed. Doors were locked. I read as though I were starving and had finally discovered water. I read about compassion shown to outcasts, about mercy offered to sinners, about healing without condition. But it was the crucifixion that shattered me. Here was God choosing suffering rather than violence, sacrifice instead of power. I had never encountered a love like this. In November 2018, Overwhelmed and unable to resist any longer, I knelt alone in my study. "Jesus," I whispered, "if you are real, show me the truth." What followed was not a vision or a voice. It was something deeper, a warmth that filled my chest, a peace that settled my heart. For the first time in my life, I felt known and accepted, not because of lineage or obedience, but simply because I was loved. I had crossed an invisible line. My secret lasted 8 months. In December 2018, exhausted from reading the Gospel of John, particularly chapter 14, I fell asleep at my desk. The Bible lay open beside me. At dawn, my trusted servant Ahmed entered the room, as he had done every morning for 15 years. He was more than a servant. He had helped raise me after my mother became ill. He was family. When I woke, I saw him standing motionless, staring at the book. The silence was unbearable. Under Sharia law, concealing apostasy is punishable by death. Ahmed understood instantly what this meant, for both of us. With tears streaming down his face, he whispered, "They will kill us both if I do not report this." I did not blame him. Within an hour, palace security surrounded my study. By evening, I stood before my father and religious authorities. The ultimatum was clear. Renounce Christ or die. I chose Christ. The verdict came swiftly. Death by public beheading within 7 days. I was thrown into a dungeon beneath the palace I once called home. There I met 3 other men condemned for the same crime, believing in Jesus. Despite their chains, they possessed a peace I had never seen among scholars or princes. They taught me what it meant to suffer with joy. On March 14th, I was told my execution would take place at dawn. That night, instead of fear, peace filled me. At Daira Square, known globally as Chop Chop Square, thousands gathered. International media, including CNN, BBC, and Al Jazeera, prepared to broadcast my death. As the executioner raised his sword, I declared, "Jesus Christ, into your hands I commit my spirit." Then the sky went dark. A sandstorm unlike anything recorded engulfed the square. In the chaos, my chains broke. I ran. 3 days later, I crossed into Jordan. On April 7th, 2019, I was baptized in the Jordan River. That day, a prince died, and a servant of Christ was born. I now live under an assumed identity. I will never return home. But I have found a greater kingdom. I traded a crown for a cross, and found life.